Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Meaningful Motivations with Tracy Erickson. And of course, if you are new to this channel, welcome. My name is Tracy Erickson, and in this episode of Notes from Heaven, I will be discussing reincarnation, and we will specifically be exploring the question, do we choose our parents? So stay tuned. If you've been watching my channel for any time at all, then you probably already know that I am a believer in reincarnation. I believe that this physical body is simply a vehicle for our soul, which lives inside. And in each lifetime, you get a different physical body with a different family, a different, personality, a different anything you want. I have always been a believer in reincarnation. In fact, even when I was a small child, I remember thinking of my past lives. For example, I do remember one time my mom was very stressed out about money and how she was going to pay the bills. And it seemed like such a struggle and really a major problem for her at that time. And I remember after witnessing this, I went outside by myself and I started to ponder. And I thought to myself, why would I choose this? Why would I choose a life that is difficult? And then at the same time, I remembered that I've already been everything. I've already been rich. I've already been poor. And I've already been everything in between. And the thing that made myself feel better in that very moment when I was just a child was the fact that I've already been everything. And I know that in the end, everything's going to be okay, no matter what happens. So even when I was young, my intimate thoughts with myself included the fact that I felt as though I chose this reality that I'm living in right now. And that thought has stuck with me even on into adulthood, obviously, because here I am discussing reincarnation and the fact that we do choose our parents. In the very first episode of Notes from Heaven, I actually talked about how your soul is indestructible. Your soul is the part of you that lives on throughout each lifetime that you choose to incarnate in. Now, some other things have been pointed out through my grandma's Notes from Heaven that point towards reincarnation and just the fact that your soul actually has a choice regarding if it wants to come back here for another human experience or not. In Grandma's letter from heaven from May of 2023, she states that there are countless souls in the universe, and we experience deep connections that humans can't fully comprehend. In her letter from November of 2023, my grandma stated that she can go back as a human or any other life form, but right now she is content as she is. And finally, in the most recent letter from my grandma in heaven, which was in May 2024, I actually asked specifically if we choose our parents, if we decide to reincarnate as a human. And here's what she said in response. Our time on earth is an adventure to be cherished and magnifies our spiritual connection with God. The bond grows stronger after we pass because on earth, our connection with God is not as obvious as it is after we pass. If a soul wants to come back and return to earth, you do have a say in the parents you were born to. It's like I already had this understanding that you make the choice if you want to reincarnate. And when you do, you also make the choice of who you want to be, what family you want to be born into, what country, what ethnicity, what sex that you are going to incarnate as. So I found it very interesting that when asked about that, it was confirmed that we are given the choice to decide what family we are born into. Back in 2008 or 2009, when I was a student at the School of Metaphysics, one of the first things we were supposed to do as students there was to think about our conditions at birth. So one assignment that I was given as homework, so to speak, was to think about all of the conditions that I was born into during this lifetime, such as what country I was born in, what state I was born in, what family I was born in, what was our financial situation, and all of these things. And the idea of this exercise was to look at your life from the soul's perspective and kind of think in terms of your soul. And if you chose these conditions at your birth, then what is it that your soul could have wanted to learn through those particular birth conditions? And then in 2009, I got my first past life profile reading, and that was also through the School of Metaphysics. During that reading, it was revealed that I was the daughter of the chief of a particular tribe in the northeastern part of what is now known as the United States.
You will search for the identity of the entity referred to as Tracy Marie Erickson. Tracy Marie Erickson. Relate a significant incarnation for this entity.
We see this one in female form. We see this to be within the land area of the northeastern part of the United States in New England. We see for this one to have been native to this area, and for this one to have been within the family of the chief of this land area. This looks to be Algonquin, or a branch of this tribal group.
And once the reading was done, we're able to ask questions about that particular lifetime. And then also questions about our current lifetime that is somewhat tied to that lifetime. And at the time, I really wasn't preparing my mind to think of questions about that lifetime. So the conductor of the report asked me if he could ask a question. And so I told him he could. And he specifically asked why I chose to be born in the family of the chief in that lifetime.
What is the significance of this one being born into the chief's family in that lifetime?
Now, this one's soul did see that the opportunities for growth would be available because of the nature of the parents. And there were bonds of affection as well. However, this was the greatest soul desire.
The answer for why was pretty simple. I believe that it was because he gave me the freedom as a woman to be able to grow into my full potential as a healer. And obviously, there were bonds of affection in that relationship between my father and I as well. I know that it's difficult to wrap your head around sometimes as a human to think that we actually choose our conditions at birth, because some people are adopted and they're not even, raised by the people who they were born to. Some people are, disabled at birth. And there are so many different variations that as a human, we just don't understand why we would choose any other condition than the absolute, what we would consider being the perfect condition. But the fact is that from the soul's perspective, it is actually quite different than it is from our earthly, limited human perspective. Your soul sees so much more. Your soul can see the brilliance of all of your lifetimes, not just this limited view of this one lifetime. So, when you're in this heavenly perspective as a soul, ready to be reincarnated in your next life, you aren't just thinking about how it can be the most comfortable for you. As a soul, what you're thinking of is, what understandings can I build in that lifetime? Your soul thinks, what can I give to humanity? Your soul thinks, what can I teach to those that I incarnate with? As well as, what can those who I incarnate with teach me? So from the human perspective, we think there's no way we would choose our conditions at birth. But from the soul's perspective, that is not limited at all. It is literally including all of your lifetimes. That perspective is a very different perspective, and it sees challenges and obstacles as ways to learn and to gain those understandings that your soul can keep from lifetime to lifetime. I would really love to know, do you guys believe in reincarnation? And if so, do you believe that you chose your parents before you were born? Tell me about it in the comment section down below, because I would love to read all of your opinions on this subject. But before I go, I also want to share with you some different posts that have been posted on a Facebook group that I happen to be a part of. Basically, this group is all about reincarnation, and where it's a place where people share their own stories of reincarnation. And I always find it fascinating when people share the experience of young children revealing the fact that they chose their parents. One user wrote, when my daughter was 4 years old, she looked up at me one day and said, I chose you. Thinking it was a little game, I sat down on the floor with her. What I wasn't prepared for was when she started to tell me a story. There were 3 ladies and I could only choose one, she said sadly, holding up 3 chubby little fingers. I couldn't understand what she was referring to, and I thought she maybe meant her teachers at nursery. She started to tell me that she couldn't remember the one lady. The other lady was crying really hard because she wanted a baby. And then she saw me crying on a bed with long hair, and she chose me. That is when my blood went cold. I knew exactly what she was referring to. That was the night before I had to reveal to my very strict parents that I was concealing a pregnancy at 16 years old, and I had never felt so alone and frightened in my life. The story of the 3 ladies came up every now and then after that, and then for the next couple of months, and then faded away completely. The story was always the same and without any more detail. Another user wrote, when my granddaughter was about 2 years old, she said to her mom, do you remember when you were a little girl and I was your mom? Another user wrote, my son and daughter, who are 1.5 years apart, told me that they met each other first and loved each other so much that they decided to be brother and sister. Together, they searched everywhere for the best parents, and they chose us. I wrote it down because I wanted to keep that memory. When I came across their story several years later, I wrote a children's book with them about it, but toned it down for the general public who may not believe in reincarnation. I kind of regret watering it down, but at least it's an experience and a happy memory that we will always have. You know, it is sad that sometimes we feel like we have to water down these experiences because we're afraid of how they would be received by the masses. But I think that the more that we can take our power back in this world as a human, The more we can take our power back, the less afraid we are of what other people think of us and what we're sharing. Another user wrote, when I was 2.5 years old, I went to my grand's and she had photo albums out. I seen a picture of my papa and told them I knew him. They, of course, said I didn't, as I'd never met him. I said that I knew him in heaven. I said that he would come and visit me in heaven before I was born, and he looked after me. I was able to talk about him and his mannerisms, his last car, and I talked about his chips. He was famous for them in his area. As far as I know, I never talked about him again. Another user wrote, I asked my young granddaughter what was her earliest memory. She said she remembered sitting with God and looking over the clouds, choosing her mother. She said she also remembered being born surrounded by a lot of blood before she was born. This child is gifted in memory, music, and dance. Another user wrote, I always was watching my daughter for comments about past life, but it never happened. She only said she was waiting for me a long time in heaven. And there was Mr. Hart, who was doing lots of good things in heaven and was taking care of all the children. She said all the children lived in a big house. Another user wrote, I've seen a few posts where children speak of choosing their parents, but if there is an element of choice, why would anyone choose abuse in their lives, as sadly as this happens to many little ones? And that is kind of what we already talked about. While it is so hard as a human to think of a person actually choosing abuse, sometimes it is what our soul actually wanted to learn from. And then here's another one. With the idea that a soul chooses the parents for the human experience, I'm curious with regards to those of us who are adopted. Would the biological mother be chosen so our life experience is that of an adoptee? Or would ending up with our adopted parents be the plan? Although that seems very random. Thoughts, please. So, my thoughts on the topic of adoption is that, yes, you choose your parent who actually births you. You choose those parents because they are going to be the actual blood tie. But I do believe that as a soul, you know that the probability is there that that is not the person who's going to raise you. And as a soul, you know that that comes with different challenges, but also different lessons. And it teaches you new ways of loving people, even if you are not related by blood. So I do believe that some souls may choose a parent who will later give them up, because there are lessons to be learned within that situation as well. Another user said, when my son was 3, I asked him if he remembered before he was born. He said yes. He told me that he knew my older son, his brother, who was 7, in heaven before he was born. They decided that they wanted to be brothers, so they decided to choose the same mom. They may have a 4-year age gap almost to the day, but they have such a remarkable bond. He doesn't remember this conversation now, but they make it very easy for me to believe. And another user said, so my little boy is 3, and he has a vivid memory of picking me to be his mummy. He says he was in a big clock, and all the mummies were up in the rocks, and that were falling down and cracking open on the ground. That's when he saw me on the ground and shouted, that's my mommy, that one right there, that's my mommy. And he picked me. I found that one to be very interesting as well. A different type of image, so to speak, than some of these other children. Another user said, my daughter, who was 3 a few months ago, she came into the bedroom where I was sitting on the floor sorting laundry. She said it was her other mother's birthday today. I thought she was just playing around, and I said, happy birthday to your other mother. She then told me how scary her other mother was. She said on her birthday, I was little and I lived in a new house. My other mother got mad at me. She chased me into my room. I went on my bed to hide, and she came in and stepped on me right here, and she pointed to her chest and her stomach. It hurt, and I cried. Then it didn't hurt anymore, and I didn't cry anymore. Now I'm here with you as my new mother. I love you. You don't make me cry or hurt me. Another user said, when one of my nephews was a toddler and had just learned to speak in sentences, he told my sister that she and her husband had been chosen for him. He also said he had a fear of bears. Another person wrote, when my oldest daughter was 2 or 3 years old, I asked her why she chose me as her mom. She replied, I didn't. I chose the tree next to you, the one where Tim went, her nephew. But it was unavailable, so I went to you. But I like you. And the crazy thing is, see, she is much more like her aunt than like me. Skin color, hair color, character, and everything. I asked her where she was before she was in my belly, and she said, I was in a place that was all white, just floating. And also, we were family before, but you were not my mother. But we did live together in a small hut. It was very hot, and we had to walk so far to get water. I was stunned. She's almost 16 now and doesn't remember. And I found that so interesting as well. This particular child said, I didn't choose you. I chose the one next to you, which was her sister. But that one was already taken. So she went into her first choice's sister. But that kept her in the family bloodline and it kept her close to her initial choice for mother. So I found that one very interesting as well. I find it interesting as well that children who are very young are the ones who remember their past lives and also remember choosing their parents. By the time the child is around 7 years old, all of the past life memories fade away and they are more fully engrossed in their current lifetime. So therefore, those more fluid memories of times before this life are now gone and they're just focused fully into this lifetime. I found that to be very interesting because years ago, when I was a student at the School of Metaphysics, they taught me that it takes about 7 years to feel fully at home and not as a foreigner, when, let's say, if you move to a new place. But that also applies for souls who have incarnated once again. It takes around 7 years to be fully immersed in the current lifetime. So usually around the age of anywhere from 6 to 8 years old, the child will simply not remember those past lives or not remember those strange memories from the time before they were born. Well, that about wraps it up for this video. So if you like this video, don't forget to click that like button. And of course, if you're a viewer but not yet a subscriber, I would love for you to click subscribe down below. And once you have subscribed, you can then turn on the notifications bell if you would like to be notified each and every time I upload a new video. Thank you guys so much for watching and spending your time with me. I love you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.